Hey there, you lovely guys. Thank you once again for coming and joining me in the shed. Actually, I don't really know how we all fit in here, to be honest. I mean, it's only a kind of shed, and I know because you've told me that there are people who visit from all over the country, from Australia, from the United States, and elsewhere. So, anyway, squeeze in, and it's great to have you here with me. Um, so, I don't know what you're doing this week. Maybe the same as last week. I'm doing a pause for thought tomorrow morning with Zoe Ball on Radio Two about 9:20. So I'd love it if you can come and join me there. That would be fantastic. And tomorrow's is partly inspired by reading those reports which maybe you've seen that came out on Friday with details of a survey of how we are feeling in the midst of the lockdown. If you have seen it, you'll know that it makes very interesting reading because apparently only 9% of Britons want life to return to how it was before all this happened. 9%, which is quite amazing, isn't it? Uh, some of us, according to the survey, are drinking more, but most are actually drinking less or have actually stopped altogether. That latter bit is not quite me, I have to say. And it seems that loads of us have noticed things like cleaner air all around, more wildlife. Don't know if there is more wildlife or we're just noticing it. But anyway, there you go. And stronger communities, which is quite amazing, really, isn't it? Considering that we're kind of locked down. And yet somehow there is this great sense of community that's being generated. Plus, apparently there's an awareness that the health of people and the health of the planet are inseparable, and that it is time, many people think, for radical environmental, social, political, and economic change, to which I would say a very big amen. Meanwhile, Jeremy Clarkson, a wonderful man, says that he's discovered through all of this, which he says he's enjoying actually, but he says that he's discovered that all he really needs is electricity, the internet, and biscuits. Which is great. I think biscuits are good in this situation. Actually, personally, I like McVitie dark chocolate, but each to their own. Others brands are available. I think maybe I need a little bit more than that. Maybe he needs a bit more than that. But it's weird, isn't it, how many different emotions we are experiencing through all of this. I know from messages and emails that lots of us have times of feeling really down, feeling really scared about what's going on. And why wouldn't we? It's a scary situation. But then there's clearly also the sense in lots of people, and comes out in that survey, that quality of life is better, that it's improved through us being locked down. And as I often say to Pat, if only we didn't have this wretched virus thing hanging over us, I could quite enjoy this. One of the problems is, I think, that if you watch enough news programs and read enough social media, you can become completely overwhelmed with information about stuff that really is scary, but you can't do anything about, which I reckon is a massive dilemma, actually, of living in an information age at the best of times, let alone when there's a pandemic hanging over us. Back in the late 1980s, a guy called Neil Postman wrote a book about all of this called Amusing Ourselves to Death. It's a great book, actually. His basic premise really is that the telegraph, the invention of the telegraph, was when everything changed. Because before that, all of the news that we got and the information was essentially local and pretty immediate, really. It had to do with things that were part of our lives, stuff that we could even do something about. But then with the invention of the telegraph, when that came, it opened up a whole explosion of information from miles and miles, well, across continents really, that didn't necessarily affect us until we knew about it. And then it could start affecting us psychologically, if no other way. And TV, Neil Postman argued, became the medium that basically turned everything into entertainment, which is why he called it entertaining ourselves to death. Um, I mean, in a perverse way, 24-hour news, everything really has been transformed into some form of entertainment. And then came the internet, of course, long after he wrote his book, for most of us, and the digital age, and a non-stop tsunami of information about stuff that we have absolutely no control over. Now, I'm not saying that we can turn the clock back, and actually, I, for one, wouldn't want to. I love the digital age, but we desperately need to learn better how to look after ourselves in a digital age. You know, our psychological and emotional health, we need to learn to look after that. And never so much as right now in the situation we found ourselves in. Of course, we need information about what's going on. We need information that's useful, but we cannot and must not let ourselves be dragged into carrying burdens that we can't bear, which is why I rewrote the Serenity Prayer to cultivate a sense of peacefulness in the midst of turmoil. And I'd like you to join me in saying it again now. We say together, God grant me the serenity to live fully and generously through circumstances I cannot control. Hope to keep on imagining better times for myself and the world. And courage to change what I can instead of simply leaving it to others. Amen. I'd suggest you come back and take a look at that prayer on a number of times, sometimes perhaps even within a day, because it's not just a prayer, it's a way of looking at the world, a way of looking at the circumstances that we are in. So, in the church calendar, today is called Low Sunday. Did you know that? It's called Low. Did you know there was a Low Sunday? Well, this is it. Probably because we need a break from all the hullabaloo of Easter. I mean, you can easily overdose on hallelujahs, I think. And I love Easter. It's all great. But after that, you just need to kind of come down to earth a little bit, don't you? And so I'm grateful, really, for Low Sunday. And in the Eastern churches, the Eastern Orthodox churches, it's also called Thomas Sunday, because the gospel reading for this day is from John chapter 20, where in the story, the risen Jesus appears again to the disciples. But this time, Thomas, who I don't know where he'd been about doing other things, but he wasn't present in the past. And now in this particular story, Thomas is present in the room. And prior to this, when he'd been told about their encounters or their appearances of Jesus to them, he'd famously said that he would not believe that it was true unless he could put his finger into the nail prints in his hands and put his hand into the side of Jesus where the sword pierced. Now, you know the story. Jesus basically says, okay, here you go. Help yourself, Thomas. But blessed are those who don't see me in the way you are and have this kind of encounter and yet still believe. So far as we can tell from the story, Thomas never actually went ahead with the medical examination, and yet he was forever branded as doubting Thomas. And it's kind of just one of those phrases now, isn't it? We describe other people now as a doubting Thomas. I've got mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, I think it's really, really unfair, especially given that a couple of chapters earlier in John, the other disciples were trying to persuade Jesus not to go to Jerusalem because they kind of had a sense of where it was all building up to. And it was Thomas who said, nah, let's go with him. Let's go with Jesus and die together. Which probably means that he could have been called Fearless Thomas. And maybe that would have been would have been fairer. But actually, I'm glad that Thomas doubted and that he's got that label, that he is really the patron saint of doubters. And if there is a holy order of Thomas, I'd like to join it. And if there isn't one, well, maybe I'll think of starting one. And it's interesting to notice as well from the story that he didn't get any reprimand from Jesus for what he was saying and how he felt. In Enneagram speak, for those of you who are familiar with that, I'm a type 7, which is, you could say, the eternal optimist, really. Wants life all the time to be very positive and upbeat. But I actually, in the way the Enneagram works, I've actually got a strong 6 wing. So type 6 really is an energy that plays a lot into my experience, though mostly without it showing too much. And type 6, well, that's the need that I have to question, to doubt, to look again, to check it out. And I reckon doubt is really the twin brother or sister of belief. Faith involves both. Faith isn't certainty. That's not faith at all. Faith is saying, I believe, but on the other hand, I could be wrong. And it's interesting that Thomas we're told that he was called Didymus, which means twin, that he had a twin. And maybe another way of looking at that is that he was someone who embodied these twin features, which I think are actually what faith is really all about. However, the thing I reckon Jesus was getting at when he said, blessed are those who don't have any proof, in effect, and yet still believe, wasn't about the unimportance of doubt, because actually I think doubt's really important. It's the thing upon which actually the whole of Western modern society is built, isn't it? I think that what he's really referring to is the reality of mystery, that some things cannot be totally rationalized. Some things cannot be fully comprehended, and yet they're still real. I mean, like love, for instance, or art, or beauty, and lots of things. Mystery is part of the human experience, and I think that mystery, that realm of mystery, is a realm which God inhabits. I think it's where we're getting closest to God when we get into the realm of mystery, whether it's religious mystery or not. I think the mystery of lying on the ground at night outside and looking up at the stars, if you can see the Milky Way, wow, that's mystery. And I think that when we do that, the sense of mystery, or the awe and the wonder that we have, is actually something, whether we're religious or not, that is taking us closer to what I call God. So anyway, at this point, I want to share a poem with you, which I think is telling us about living with mystery and how mystery can save us. It's by David White, who is a poet. I've mentioned him probably before. I love his poetry, and this is how his poem goes. And it's actually called Opening of Eyes. Opening of Eyes. That day, I saw beneath dark clouds the passing of light over the water, and I heard the voice of the world speak out. I knew then, as I had before, life is no passing memory of what has been, nor the remaining pages in a great book waiting to be read. It is the opening of eyes long closed. It is the vision of far-off things seen for the silence they hold. It is the heart, after years of secret conversing, speaking out loud in the clear air. It is Moses in the desert, fallen to his knees before the lit bush. It is the man throwing away his shoes as if to enter heaven, and finding himself astonished, opened at last, falling in love with solid ground. And that's a great poem, and saying, life, this is what life is. Life isn't about the passing memory of what's been. Life isn't what's happened before. It's not the remaining pages in a great book. It's not about the future. I think what he's saying is life is actually here. Life is in the moment. Life is right now. Which is why he then goes on to say it's the opening of eyes long closed. It's about the fact that we live so much of our lives with our eyes closed, sort of sleepwalking, if you like, um, worrying anxiously about what's going to happen in the future, or grinding over and over what's gone in the past. But he says that life is actually being here now, having our eyes open. It's the vision of far off things seen for the silence they hold. In other words, it's yes, it's got that sense of a destiny, of a future. Life is about that, but it's a silent world, and so it has a wonder and mystery about it, but not something that we can reason out. Life, he says, is the heart after years of secret conversing, speaking out loud in the clear air. I love that. It's the idea that uh, there are things deep within us that we hardly even dare to admit to ourselves, and yet they're part of that underlying conversation within. I mean, fears are often like that, but also hopes and aspirations. Lots of things are these hidden conversations, and he says to really live is to allow the inner conversations to come out into the clear air. And Moses, well, he refers to the story of Moses, which is another great mystery, when he wandered through the desert with his sheep and saw the burning bush and heard a voice speaking out of it that called to him and told him to take off his shoes. And you can see that in lots of ways, but actually I think the beauty of it is, well, we all know what it's like. There's something very precious about standing on God's earth without any shoes on, because in a way that's how it's supposed to be. We're connecting with the earth, and that's kind of where this poem culminates, really, about falling in love with solid ground, realizing that the solid ground actually is the ground of the mystery of life, and it's always there, but we live so much of our life with our eyes closed. There's a lovely piece of sculpture also that I'd like to just show you by Carl Millet, a Swedish sculptor. It's called The Hand of God, and it's a fantastic image, isn't it, of this man standing on this massive hand, which the title tells us is the hand of God. And the man isn't looking at the hand. He may not even know it's there. He probably doesn't. Is he shouting up at the heavens? Is he someone that's angrily shouting to the heavens because, I don't know, of some suffering or some injustice? Is he waving his fist at God? Or is he looking for something, some mystery in life that he can't find? The sculptor seems to be saying, hey, it's under your feet all the time. And I think that this is, where we so often need to come to, is to that place where we realize that everything that we need to get us through life in general and through this pandemic, everything we need is there. The hand of God is holding us even when we're completely and utterly unaware of it. So I'd like us just to take a moment to pray before we go on and share some in a little communion together. And I find at the moment there's a song I love by a American singer called Mary Gaucher, which is called Prayer Without Words. And I find more and more that my prayers don't have words. I've lost the words to say, and that's why I think symbolic prayers are very helpful and useful. Things like lighting a candle, or holding a stone in your hand, or something like that. So we're just going to take a couple of minutes of silent prayer in which maybe all you need to do, there's an image of some waves that you caught a glimpse of a moment ago. Maybe you just want to look at the sea. The sea is like this huge prayer to me, this mighty connection with the divine. Um, Maybe you want to specifically remember certain people at this time. There are so many to think about. Or just bring yourself. Let's take a couple of moments of quiet contemplation. It's just wonderful, isn't it? The sea. I know it's one of the things that Pat and both of us really are looking forward to when we're released from our lockdown to be able to just get down to the sea. Um, there's a mystery for you, in visual form. So I hope that you've got some sort of bread and wine or similar thing to hand. We're going to just share together. I know I've had somebody comment actually that they think that my supply of single malt is sort of in serious trouble. Um, well, don't worry, I've got some more. But whether you've got some bread and wine, a cup of tea and a piece of cake, or a glass of something else, whatever it is, this is not some highfalutin communion service we're having here. It's just us little gang here crowded into the shed, feeling this sense of oneness with our global family and all that people are going through right now, and to share in this little communion, whether you're religious or not, is a way of us reaching out beyond our present situation, reaching out in hope and faith for something beyond this, and reaching out our arms to embrace people around the world who are suffering so much at this time in one way or another. So if you'd like to say the words in white with me, that would be great. The God of love is with you. Lift up your hearts. Let us give thanks to the giver of life. We do give thanks to you, O God, for your love for this world. You look upon us and still name us good. You conceive in us 1,000 possibilities and carry us on into the timeless struggle in bringing to birth the reign of love in the world. We thank you for our brother Jesus, who gave hope to ordinary people like us, crashing through the boundaries that separate us from life and from each other, with those who've gone before us and those who will come after us, with people of every time, place, culture and creed. We unite with all creation in the eternal hymn, saying together, Holy, loving God, mystery of the universe, who cannot ever truly be named, heaven and earth are filled with your wonder. Save us, we pray, from small minds and mean spirits, and fill us instead with passion for kindness and justice. And so, dear God, we remember the night before Jesus died, when he took bread. He gave thanks for everything he had. He broke the bread and shared it with his friends, asking them to remember his complete surrender to the spirit of life and love, and his enduring love for each of them. And so today we take bread and wine, mindful of the Spirit of Jesus at work in our lives, in ordinary everyday ways, but also in sustaining us through these difficult times. And so we eat and drink, mindful of our bonding with Jesus and with all creation through the Spirit at work in our lives. We say together these words of the Lord's Prayer from the New Zealand Prayer Book. Eternal Spirit, Earth Maker, Pain Bearer, Life Giver, Source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name echo through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and testing, strengthen us. From trials too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. So I invite you to take your bread or cracker or whatever it may be, and let's eat it together now as a token of God's love embracing us and the whole world at this time. And then take your wine or your cup of tea or whatever and drink this as a symbol of the outpoured life of Christ, of love poured out upon us and the whole world. Dear friends, wherever you are today, whether you're on your own or with loved ones around you, you should know this, that you are not alone, that invisible hand of God is beneath you, holding you and sustaining you through all these really dark and difficult times. So I'm going to finish with a blessing now. It's a blessing that I often use. The blessing of God, the eternal goodwill of God, the shalom and salam of God, the wildness and warmth of God be among us and between us now and always, and the blessing of God, Creator, Liberator and Sustainer, be with us now and always. Amen. Well, there you go. Thanks for being with me again here in the shed. Oh, incidentally, I know somebody asked me about this lovely fellow up here. He's called Harry, actually. Harry the hare. We love hares. They're just such amazing creatures. We saw two of them having a boxing match once in a remote field in North Yorkshire, and they're the fastest uh, mammal in the United Kingdom, actually. 45 miles an hour they can run. So Harry is here, sitting, presiding over us through our shed meetings, and he's always looking over my shoulder. And I want to thank you for looking over my shoulder tonight. And go in peace to love and serve the Lord in the name of Christ. And I'll see you very soon. Amen.